Hi, this is Chris Madsen. I'm going to show you how to make journal-worthy tables in Microsoft Word. When creating tables, you can certainly use Excel or other programs. I like Word because it has good formatting features. And also, if you have to cut and paste tables from Excel back into a Word document, you can lose some of the formatting. It's important, whichever program you use to create the table, make use of the formatting tools available to you. For example, don't use spaces to create indentations or to create columns. It makes it harder for journals to then format the final tables. The timing of this tutorial, you should be formatting your table when you already know what your table layout is and when you've already done all of your data analyses. So you can create a shell table that doesn't look beautiful at any time as you're thinking about your project, but don't bother doing the formatting until you're actually ready to publish. This is a table from a paper we published a couple years ago, and what I'm going to do is recreate this table in Word. That's our exercise in this short video. Just a couple of useful symbols for tables. You can create a plus minus. Some journals like to say mean plus minus standard deviation when they're indicating a standard deviation. In this particular table, we're going to use parentheses to indicate the standard deviation. And also greater than or equal to, which I do use in this particular table, and less than or equal to. All right, so here's the table. And first, I'm going to look at how many columns I need. I've got 3 columns of data, 1, 2, 3, plus I've got a column that has descriptors or variable names. So let's make a table that has 4 columns. Let's go into Word. We'll go to Insert, Table, and we'll create a table that has 4 columns, and we'll go ahead and just do 3 rows for now. It's very easy to add rows. Now, let's go back for just a second to that table. I want to figure out where to start my descriptors. So I see that the first row I am going to have is going to say mean and SD, which indicates the type of data that are in the table. And then the second row are headers that actually tell us which groups I'm describing with the data. So let's go back and say that we'll start our actual data in the third row. So female and age. All right, so third row we're going to put in female, and I know that's a %. And then the fourth row, and there's a couple of ways to add a fourth row. If you go to the last column in the last row and hit the tab key, it adds a row. You can also add rows by going to the layout tab and then inserting either below or above. You can also insert columns to the left and the right using the layout tab. All right, the next piece of data was age in years. Now, I know these 3 columns here are for my groups. They identify the groups, so let's put in the data for those. And this first row was where we had mean and SD, which tells us the content of the data in the table. And I actually want to merge these cells, so I go up to my layout tab and I click on the merge icon. Now anything I type, I can spread over all the cells. This is going to be mean and SD. I like these little icons here. They let us align the text in the cells, and I want to align it both horizontally and vertically. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is just fill in the rest of the data, and then we'll format. I've just cut and pasted all the data. It's not at all formatted, but we have all the data we want. If we look back at the table one more time, there's a couple of things I want to be sure that we do. First, I want to be sure that we indent any of the subcategories. So for example, under race, under mother's education level, and time in MVPA. We want those to show up with an indent. And then for text that wraps, for example, mother's education level wraps across 2 lines, I want to be sure to indicate that level isn't a new variable, it's just wrapping, and so I want to make a small indentation there as well. And finally, I'm going to want to center the data in all the columns. So going back to Word, let's take the subcategories for race and we'll indent, but instead of using spaces, we'll go up to the symbols or these little carets that tell us how far to indent the paragraph, and we'll slide them over just a little bit. We'll do the same thing down here for time in MVPA, across those various times of the day. And then we know that that's another subcategory. I don't like that this text is wrapping, so I'm going to make this column just a little bit longer. And I do that by going up to the table icon and moving the table column over just a little bit. Now, I'm noticing that these columns, these three columns, are much wider than they need to be. So I'm going to move each one of these over, and I'm actually going to center the text in all three of these columns. We can use that icon again for centering the text. This is looking pretty good. We haven't yet dealt with mother's education level needing to get indented. So the second line, I can do the same thing here. I'll indent, but I don't want the first line of the paragraph to get indented, so you can see there's a tiny caret up top. That's the first line indent, and we're going to move that back to match the other text. And then the subcategories, we'll just indent a little bit farther than the ones before. And now the table's looking pretty good. The biggest difference between the table here and the published table are the borders. And journals typically don't like lines in between all of the numbers, so let's take all the lines and get rid of them. And to do that, I go to the Table Design tab, and I'll click on Borders, and I'll say No Border. Now I'm going to draw in a heavy border for the very top of the table. So to do that, I click inside my table. The pen color is fine, but I want a heavy point. Let's do 3 points. And then I'll actually come in and draw the line. And now I have a heavy border that begins my table. And then I want a thinner border that separates all of my headers from the actual data in the table. So let's go back to just a 1 point line, and I'll come in and just draw this line as well. And now that's a table that I would be willing to send into a journal. So that is it for drawing tables in Word. Thanks for listening.